I don't know if I can do this. Magnolia Maggie Thornhill gripped the door handle of the faded blue pickup truck, her fingers trembling slightly. The morning sun painted the Thornhill ranch in golden hues, and everything seemed to conspire for her to stay. The smell of apple pie wafting from the kitchen, Buttercup's soft neighing in the stable, the familiar creaking of the rusty windmill. Her mother, Dorothy, discreetly wiped her eyes with her flowered apron. "Oh, my girl. Maggie, you were born for bigger things than Willow Creek." Her father, Harold, had that hoarse voice of someone holding back a stubborn cry. His broad farmer's shoulders seemed smaller that morning. "We've always known that." 23 years. That's all she had lived on that piece of land with more chickens than people, where everyone knew her name and her shoe size. And now, with a worn suitcase in the back seat and an address in Connecticut scribbled on a crumpled paper, Maggie was about to trade all of this for something completely unknown. 2 days ago, everything changed with a simple phone call. Maggie was fixing the south pasture fence when her cell phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. "Miss Thornhill, this is Constance Pemberton from the Silver Oak Domestic Talent Agency." Maggie's heart raced. She had applied for that position 3 weeks ago, on a sleepless night of desperation after being fired from the Rosebud Diner, her 4th job lost in 2 years. The position seemed unreal. Housekeeper at a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. Generous salary, accommodation included, highest standard family. "Congratulations, you've been selected. The Ashford Whitmore family was delighted with your profile." Delighted? Maggie looked at her dirt-stained nails, her worn boots, her blonde hair escaping from her messy braid. "There's just one detail." Constance's voice lowered, conspiratorial. "You'll be starting right during the preparations for the wedding of the year. Mr. Thaddeus Whitmore III will marry socialite Vivian Ashford Sinclair in 6 weeks. It will be intense." Maggie should have noticed the warning in those words. Now, standing before her parents, reality weighed heavy. "What if I'm not good enough?" Maggie's voice came out small, revealing the insecure girl behind the bravado. Harold stepped closer and placed his huge, calloused hands on his daughter's shoulders. His blue eyes, identical to hers, shone intensely. "Magnolia Ruth Thornhill, you listen well to what I'm about to say. You have the purest heart I've ever known and your grandmother's determination. Those rich people up there in Connecticut, they need you far more than you need them." Dorothy opened her purse and pulled out a yellowed envelope. This was from Grandma Rosemary. She always said that when you left for the world, you should take it with you. Inside were $300 in carefully kept bills and a note in shaky handwriting. "Be brave, my dear. Love finds the pure of heart in the most unexpected places." Maggie hugged her parents tightly, memorizing the smell of her mother's lavender soap and the rough texture of her father's flannel shirt. When she finally got into the pickup, they stood there, hand in hand, waving. Through the rearview mirror, Maggie watched the farm get smaller and smaller. The crooked sign, Thornhill Ranch, Esther 1952, disappeared around the bend of the dirt road. She had no idea that in less than 48 hours, she would look into Thaddeus Whitmore III's eyes and feel her entire world turn upside down. She didn't imagine that a man promised to another woman could make her question everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and destiny. And she definitely didn't expect that the perfect bride, Vivian Ashford Sinclair, would become her worst enemy before they even knew each other's names. The road ahead was long, almost 1,000 miles to Connecticut. Maggie turned on the radio, took a deep breath, and pressed the accelerator. Sometimes life doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply pushes you straight into the unknown and hopes you learn to fly before you fall. Maggie is on her way to the biggest challenge of her life. What awaits her at the Whitmore mansion? Who is Thaddeus really? And why does her heart already seem to know that nothing will be as she imagined? The Whitmore estate looked like something out of a fairy tale. if fairy tales included 12-car garages and security gates with actual guards. Maggie's pickup truck sputtered and coughed as she pulled up to the iron gates, looking painfully out of place among the perfectly manicured hedges. A security guard emerged from his booth, eyeing her vehicle with barely concealed disdain. "Deliveries go around back," he said, not even checking his clipboard. "I'm not a delivery. I'm the new housekeeper, Magnolia Thornhill." His expression shifted from dismissive to surprised. He scanned his list twice. "You're 2 hours early." "I drove through the night. Didn't want to be late." Something flickered across his face. Maybe respect, maybe pity. "Ms. Pemberton is expecting you at noon. You might want to prepare yourself." The gate swung open with an ominous creak. The driveway alone was longer than her entire ranch back home. When the mansion finally came into view, Maggie's breath caught. 3 stories of pristine white stone, with columns that belonged in a history book and windows that sparkled like diamonds. Rose gardens sprawled in every direction, and a fountain featuring cherubs and dolphins dominated the circular drive. She parked her truck next to a silver Bentley and immediately felt like apologizing to it. "Okay, Maggie," she whispered to herself, gripping the steering wheel. "You've got this. You're a Thornhill. Thornhills don't back down." But Thornhills also didn't usually walk into mansions worth more than their entire hometown. She grabbed her suitcase and headed toward what she hoped was the service entrance. The early June morning was already warm, and she could hear voices coming from somewhere behind the house. Following the sound, she rounded the corner and froze. A man stood by the Olympic-sized pool, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like a caged panther. Even from a distance, Maggie could tell he was furious. "I don't care what the merger timeline says, Richard. I'm not moving the wedding up 2 weeks." "Vivienne is all ready." He stopped mid-sentence, turning sharply. That's when their eyes met. Thaddeus Whitmore III was not what Maggie expected. The society pages had shown a stiff man in tuxedos, always photographed at charity galas with a practiced smile. This man was different. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that suggested he did more than sign checks. But it was his eyes that stopped her, storm gray and intense, currently locked on hers with an expression she could. Time seemed. He stared at her. The phone slipped slightly in his hand. "Richard, I'll call you back." He hung up without waiting for a response, still looking at Maggie like she was a puzzle he needed to solve immediately. "I'm so sorry," Maggie stammered, her accent suddenly feeling 10 times thicker. "I'm early. I was looking for the service entrance and I heard voices and I didn't mean to interrupt." "Who are you?" His voice was deep, commanding, but not unkind. "Magnolia Thornhill." "The new housekeeper? I know I'm not supposed to be here until noon, but I drove straight through and—" "Magnolia," he repeated, testing the word. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Like the tree?" "Like the flower, actually. My mama loved them. Everyone calls me Maggie." "Maggie." He said it softer this time, still watching her with that unsettling intensity. Then he seemed to catch himself, his expression shifting to something more guarded. "You're not what I expected." "I get that a lot." "Thaddeus!" A sharp, crystalline voice cut through the morning air. "What on earth is taking so long? The caterer is on line 3 and absolutely spiraling about the—" A woman appeared from the French doors leading to the pool area. She was stunning in that intimidating, untouchable way. Tall, willowy, with platinum blonde hair in a perfect chignon and wearing a white pantsuit that probably cost more than Maggie's truck. Everything about her screamed old money, from her pearl earrings to her dismissive gaze. Vivienne Ashford Sinclair, the bride, the perfect socialite, the woman who had everything Maggie could never dream of having. Vivienne's ice blue eyes swept over Maggie once, and her expression curdled like spoiled milk. "Thaddeus, darling, why is there a person in our pool area?" She said person the way someone might say rodent. "This is Magnolia Thornhill. our new housekeeper. Oh. The Vivian's laugh was like breaking glass. Well, she's certainly rustic. Constance assured me she was sending someone experienced, not someone who looks like she just fell off a hay wagon. Maggie felt her cheeks burn, but she lifted her chin. I may be from Tennessee, ma'am, but I know how to work hard, and I'm a quick learner. Ma'am? Vivian's eyebrow arched dangerously. How delightfully quaint. Thaddeus, can I speak with you, privately? But Thaddeus was still looking at Maggie with that strange expression. I'm sure you'll do fine here, Miss Thornhill. Mrs. Henshaw, our head housekeeper, will show you around when she arrives. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Please call me Thaddeus. Vivian's hand snapped to his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in slightly. Darling, we really need to discuss the seating arrangements. Now. As Vivian practically dragged Thaddeus away, he glanced back once. Their eyes met again, and Maggie felt that strange flutter in her chest. The same one she'd felt when she first saw him. This was dangerous. This was wrong. This man was engaged to be married in 6 weeks. But as Maggie stood there in the morning sun, her worn suitcase at her feet, and her heart beating too fast, she couldn't shake her grandmother's words. Love finds the pure of heart in the most unexpected places. She had a terrible feeling she was in more trouble than she'd ever imagined. The spark has ignited, but the fire is forbidden. What happens when duty collides with desire? And how far will Vivian go to protect what she believes is hers? Mrs. Henshaw turned out to be a stern but fair woman in her 60s, who ran the Whitmore household like a military operation. Within 3 hours of arrival, Maggie had been given a uniform, which actually fit miraculously, a tour of the mansion's 32 rooms, and a list of duties that made her head spin. The family wing is off limits unless you're summoned, Mrs. Henshaw explained, her Scottish accent clipping each word. Mr. Whitmore values his privacy. Miss Ashford Sinclair, however. She paused meaningfully. That one has eyes everywhere. Watch yourself around her, dear. Is she always so? Cold? Calculating? Yes. Mrs. Henshaw lowered her voice as they walked through the servants' corridor. Between you and me, I've served this family for 20 years. That woman isn't marrying Mr. Whitmore for love. It's a merger, plain and simple. Ashford Hotels and Whitmore Industries. 2 empires becoming one. Maggie's stomach twisted. And Thaddeus, Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Henshaw gave her a sharp look. That's complicated territory, child. Best not to go wandering. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That evening, Maggie was finishing her duties in the library, a 2-story room with more books than her hometown's entire public library, when she heard the door click shut behind her. You don't have to call me Mr. Whitmore when no one else is around. She spun around. Thaddeus stood there, having traded his dress shirt for a simple navy sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered. Mrs. Henshaw said this room wouldn't be used tonight. It usually isn't, but Vivian is hosting her bridesmaids for dinner, and I needed somewhere quiet. He walked to the bourbon cart, poured himself 2 fingers, then hesitated. Do you drink, Maggie? Not usually while working. You're off duty. Mrs. Henshaw's rules. After 8 p.m., your time is yours. He poured a second glass and held it out. Against her better judgment, Maggie accepted. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and that electric current ran through her again. Thank you, Sir Thaddeus. He smiled at her correction and settled into one of the leather armchairs, gesturing for her to sit. Tell me about Tennessee. What made you leave? You really want to know? At his nod, she continued. Willow Creek is beautiful, but it's small. Everybody knows everybody's business. I kept losing jobs because I was clumsy or talked too much or didn't fit the mold. My parents never made me feel bad about it, but I could see the worry in their eyes. When this opportunity came up, she shrugged. It felt like a sign. You're not clumsy. I watched you today. You move through spaces like you're trying not to disturb them. That's awareness, not clumsiness. Maggie's breath caught. No one had ever described her that way. "What about you?" she dared to ask. "Do you always live in a house this big?" Thaddeus laughed. A real laugh, not the polished one she'd heard him use with the caterer. "I grew up here. Spent my childhood in this very library while my father built his empire. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps. Business school, board meetings, strategic marriages." His voice hardened on those last words. Strategic marriages. He met her eyes, and she saw something raw there. Conflict, maybe even pain.
"Vivian and I have known each other since we were children. Our families always assumed, and I never questioned it, until—" He stopped abruptly, downing the rest of his bourbon. "Until," Maggie whispered. The door burst open. Vivian stood there in a stunning emerald cocktail dress, her expression venomous. "How cozy. The help is keeping you company now?" Maggie jumped to her feet. "I was just finishing a drink with my fiancé?" Vivian's smile was razor sharp.
"How wonderfully inappropriate. Thaddeus, darling, Bunny Ashford Mitchell wants to confirm the honeymoon villa in Santorini. She's on speakerphone in the drawing room." "Vivian, Maggie was just—" "I don't care what the maid was just doing." Vivian turned her full attention to Maggie. "Let me be crystal clear, Tennessee. You're here to clean, serve, and stay invisible. My wedding is the most important event of the season, and I won't have some country bumpkin ruining it with her starry-eyed crush on the groom. I don't have a— Please. I saw how you looked at him this morning. That pathetic, hopeful little look." Vivian stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Here's some free advice. Men like Thaddeus don't end up with girls like you. We marry our own kind. You're a temporary distraction at best, a cautionary tale at worst." "That's enough." Thaddeus's voice cut like steel. He stood, placing himself between them. "Vivian, you're out of line. I'm protecting what's mine." But her eyes flickered with something— uncertainty? Fear? "Go to your dinner party. I'll handle the phone call." After Vivian left in a whirlwind of fury and expensive perfume, silence filled the library. Maggie set down her glass with shaking hands. "I should go." "Maggie, wait." Thaddeus caught her wrist gently. "I'm sorry." She had no right. She had every right. She's your fiancé. Maggie pulled away, her heart breaking in ways she didn't understand. This was a mistake. I should never have stayed to talk. Was it? His eyes searched hers desperately. "Because it's the first real conversation I've had in months, maybe years. That's not my problem to solve." But even as she said it, Maggie knew she was lying to them both. "Good night, Mr. Whitmore." She fled before he could see the tears threatening to spill. In her small room in the servants' quarters, Maggie lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Her grandmother's note was on the nightstand. "Love finds the pure of heart in the most unexpected places." But what happened when that love was impossible? What happened when it could destroy everything? Outside her window she could hear the laughter from Vivian's dinner party. Champagne toasts, perfect lives, a world she would never belong to. And somewhere in that massive mansion, Thaddeus Whitmore was probably wondering the same thing she was. How had everything gotten so complicated in just one day? The lines have been drawn, but hearts don't follow rules. As the wedding approaches, how long can Maggie and Thaddeus pretend they don't feel the pull between them? And what will Vivian do when she realizes she's not just fighting for a wedding? She's fighting for a man who might not love her at all. 3 weeks passed in a careful, dance of avoidance. Maggie perfected the art of being present, but invisible. Thaddeus threw himself into work, leaving the mansion before dawn and returning after midnight. Vivian, sensing victory, became insufferable, her wedding plans consuming the entire household like a glittering plague. Then came the engagement party. 200 guests, Maggie, Mrs. Henshaw announced at the staff meeting. The creme de la creme of Connecticut society. Miss Ashford Sinclair wants perfection. That means all hands on deck. Maggie's role was simple. Circulate with champagne trays, stay silent, disappear into the background. She could do that. She'd been doing it for weeks. The garden had been transformed into something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, string quartets playing Vivaldi, ice sculptures catching the sunset. Women dripped in diamonds. Men discussed stock portfolios. Everyone belonged except her. More champagne, darling. A woman in a ridiculous feathered hat thrust her empty glass at Maggie without even looking at her face. Maggie refilled it with a practiced smile. Invisible. She was good at invisible. Have you seen Thaddeus? The woman continued to her companion. He looks positively miserable. Poor Vivian, marrying a man who clearly wishes he were anywhere else. Well, it's not about love, is it? It's about the merger. Ashford Hotels gets access to Whitmore's international portfolio, and Thaddeus gets, well, Vivian. They laughed like this was all terribly amusing. Maggie moved away before she heard more, but the words stung. Was Thaddeus miserable? You there, girl! Vivian's voice cut through the garden chatter. She stood on the terrace in a white dress that probably cost more than Maggie's entire year's salary, beckoning imperiously. I need you inside, now. Maggie followed her into the mansion, away from the party. Vivian's smile vanished the moment they were alone. I have a task for you. There's a box in Thaddeus's study, black leather, locked. I need you to find the key and bring me what's inside. I can't go through Mr. Whitmore's private things. Can't or won't? Vivian's eyes glittered dangerously. Let me rephrase. You will do this, or you'll find yourself back in that sad little town, living in that pathetic ranch, serving coffee to truckers for the rest of your mediocre life. Maggie's hands clenched. Why would you ask me to betray his trust? Because I need to know if my suspicions are correct. Vivian stepped closer, her voice dropping to poison. He's been different since you arrived. Distracted. Distant. I want to know what he's hiding in that study, and you're going to help me find out. No. The slap came so fast, Maggie barely registered it until her cheek burned. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from pain, but from shock and humiliation. You forget your place, Vivian hissed. You're nothing. A servant, disposable. If you won't help me willingly, I'll make sure you're fired for theft. I'll plant something in your room myself if I have to. Is there a problem here? Both women spun around. Thaddeus stood in the doorway, still in his tuxedo from the party, his expression thunderous. His eyes went immediately to Maggie's reddened cheek. What did you do? His voice was quiet, deadly. She was being insubordinate, Vivian said smoothly. I was simply reminding her of appropriate behavior. By hitting her. Thaddeus crossed the room in 3 strides. He gently took Maggie's chin, tilting her face to examine the mark. His touch was so tender, it made her want to cry for entirely different reasons. Did she hurt you? I'm fine, Maggie whispered, though she wasn't. Nothing about this was fine. Thaddeus, don't be dramatic, Vivian laughed, but it sounded forced. It was barely a tap. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of this house. The party's over for you. Vivian's composure cracked. You can't be serious. Our guests can celebrate without you. I'm sure your mother will make excuses. Thaddeus's hand was still cupping Maggie's face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. You laid hands on someone under my protection. In my house. That's unforgivable. Under your protection? Vivian's voice rose shrilly. She's a housekeeper, and you're touching her like, oh God. Her face went pale, then red. This is about her. You have feelings for the help. Vivian, how long? She was shaking now, fury and hurt warring on her face. How long have you been making a fool of me? I haven't touched her. I haven't done anything inappropriate. Thaddeus finally dropped his hand from Maggie's face, but his eyes never left hers. But you're right about one thing. I do have feelings. Feelings I've been trying to ignore for weeks. Maggie's heart stopped. The room spun. You're choosing her over me? Vivian's voice cracked. Over our families? Over everything we've built? We haven't built anything, Thaddeus said quietly. Our parents built it. I'm 31 years old and I've never made a single decision based on what I actually wanted. Until now. This is insane, Vivian shrieked. You're throwing away a Fortune 500 merger for a girl who can barely hold a champagne tray without trembling. She trembles because people like you terrify her. But she's braver than both of us combined. Thaddeus turned to Vivian fully. The wedding is off. Silence crashed through the room like a physical force. You'll regret this, Vivian whispered, mascara starting to run. Both of you. I will destroy you. I will make sure everyone knows what kind of man breaks an engagement for a trashy little. Finish that sentence, and I'll sue you for slander. Thaddeus's voice was ice. Leave, now! Vivian fled, her sobs echoing through the hallway. Maggie stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Thaddeus had just blown up his entire life. For her. I should go, she stammered. I should pack and... Don't. He caught her hand. Please don't run from this. This? There is no this. You just ended your engagement. Your life is falling apart, and it's my fault. My life was already falling apart. You just made me brave enough to admit it. He pulled her closer, and Maggie's resolve crumbled. From the moment I saw you by that pool, something shifted. I tried to ignore it. God knows I tried. But Maggie, I can't marry Vivian when every time I close my eyes, I see you. This is crazy, she whispered, even as she swayed toward him. We barely know each other. Then let's change that. His forehead touched hers. Let me know you, the real you. No titles, no roles. Just us. Outside, the party continued, oblivious to the earthquake happening inside. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. Scandal. Fury, chaos. But right now, in this moment, Maggie let herself hope. The engagement is shattered, but the real battle has just begun. How will society react? What will Vivian do for revenge? And can a love born in chaos possibly survive what's coming? By sunrise, the scandal had erupted like a wildfire. Maggie woke to her phone, buzzing incessantly. Texts from Jolene back home. OMG, are you the girl in the articles? Followed by links to gossip sites, screaming headlines like Whitmore heir dumps heiress for housekeeper and Cinderella scandal rocks Connecticut elite. Someone had leaked everything. The broken engagement. Thaddeus's declaration. Even a blurry photo of them in the hallway, his hand on her face, looking at each other like nothing else existed. Mrs. Henshaw knocked softly. Dear, Mr. Whitmore's parents have arrived. It's not pleasant. Maggie could hear the shouting from 3 floors up. Have you lost your mind? A woman's shrill voice, Thaddeus's mother, Catherine Whitmore. The Ashfords are threatening to pull out of the merger. Do you have any idea what that will cost us? I don't care about the merger, Thaddeus's voice, strained but firm. Don't care? This company is your legacy. Your grandfather built it from nothing. And I'm suffocating under the weight of it. Maggie pressed her hand to her mouth, guilt twisting her stomach into knots. This was her fault. She'd destroyed his life in 3 weeks. A sharp knock on her door made her jump. A man stood there, silver-haired, imposing, wearing a suit that screamed power. Thaddeus's father, Richard Whitmore. Miss Thornhill, we need to talk. He didn't wait for permission, stepping inside her small room with the air of someone accustomed to controlling every space he entered. His eyes swept over her cheap furniture, her worn suitcase, the photo of her parents on the nightstand. How much? I'm sorry? How much money will it take for you to leave? 50,000? 100,000? He pulled out a checkbook. Name your price. Maggie's blood turned to ice. You think I'm doing this for money? Everyone has a price, Miss Thornhill. You seem like a practical girl. Surely you understand that this infatuation cannot possibly last. My son will tire of this rebellion and you'll be left with nothing. I'm offering you a generous settlement to walk away now, with your dignity intact.
My dignity?
Maggie stood, trembling with anger and hurt. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a 23-year-old girl from nowhere who stumbled into a situation way beyond her understanding. I know my son is confusing genuine feeling with guilt and obligation. Richard's voice softened slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to protect you both from a mistake that will ruin multiple lives. If Thaddeus wants me to leave, he can tell me himself. My son doesn't know what he wants. He's never had to fight for anything in his life. This feels exciting to him, forbidden, romantic. But reality will set in. The press, the social exile, the business consequences. Richard leaned in. Can you handle being called a gold digger, a homewrecker, having your family's name dragged through the mud? Maggie thought of her parents, their simple, honest life. This scandal would reach Willow Creek. They'd be humiliated. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. I believe you, which is why I'm offering you an out. He placed the checkbook on her dresser. Think about it. For both your sakes. After he left, Maggie collapsed on her bed, tears finally spilling over. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was being selfish, letting Thaddeus blow up his life for something that couldn't possibly work. That evening she found Thaddeus in the garden, sitting on a stone bench by the fountain. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, his tie gone. They've been at me for 8 hours straight, he said when she approached. Lawyers, accountants, my mother crying, my father threatening. The Ashfords are demanding compensation for breach of contract. Vivian's given 3 interviews calling you every name imaginable. Thaddeus, I can't let you do this. His head snapped up. What? Your father was right. This is destroying everything you've built. Your family, your company, your reputation. I don't give a damn about my reputation. He stood, crossing to her. Maggie, for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something real over something expected. Don't take that away from me. But what if it doesn't work? What if we're just caught up in the moment, and in 6 months you wake up and realize you threw everything away for what? For a woman who makes me laugh? Who looks at me like I'm a person instead of a portfolio? Who'd rather read in the library than attend another soul-crushing charity gala? He cupped her face in both hands. I've dated women like Vivian my entire life. Beautiful, appropriate, boring. You terrify me because you're real. Because with you, I can't hide behind money or status. I have to actually be someone worth knowing. I'm so scared, Maggie admitted, her voice breaking. I'm scared I'm not enough, that I'll embarrass you, that I'll let you down. You could never. He stopped as her phone buzzed, and buzzed again, and again. Maggie pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown numbers, dozens of them, voice messages, texts. She opened one at random and went white. What is it? Thaddeus took the phone, and his face darkened with fury. Someone had found her parents' address, found their phone number. The messages were vile, calling her a whore, a social climber, threatening her family. One text showed a photo of Thornhill Ranch with the message, "Gold diggers burn in hell, along with their families." Oh God, Maggie gasped. My parents. I have to call them. I have to. Thaddeus was already dialing. Richard, it's me. I need security at an address in Tennessee. Now, armed security. He rattled off her parents' information while Maggie stood frozen in horror. This was real. This was dangerous. People were threatening her family because she'd fallen for the wrong man. When he hung up, Thaddeus pulled her into his arms. I've got a security team heading there now. Your parents will be protected. I promise. This is insane. We can't live like this. We can. We will. He tilted her chin up, his eyes fierce. Maggie, listen to me. I know this is hard. I know it's scary. But I'm not letting you go. Not to my parents. Not to the press. Not to anyone. We're going to weather this storm together. How can you be so sure? Because 3 weeks ago, I was sleepwalking through life, going through motions, marrying someone I didn't love because it was expected. You woke me up. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then hovered over her lips. Let me be awake. Please. When their lips finally met, it wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate, fierce, real. Two people choosing each other despite the world burning down around them. In the distance, camera flashes went off. Someone was photographing them. Tomorrow would bring more headlines, more fury, more consequences. But tonight, they had this. And sometimes, that had to be enough. The battle lines are drawn, and the casualties are mounting. As Vivian plots her ultimate revenge and society closes ranks against them, can Maggie and Thaddeus's love survive the firestorm? Or will the price of defying expectations prove too high? 2 weeks of warfare. That's what it felt like. Vivian had transformed from a spurned bride into a tactical weapon. She'd hired a PR firm specifically to destroy Maggie's reputation. Tabloids published leaked stories about Maggie seducing Thaddeus, fake quotes from friends back home, claiming she'd always been after rich men. Someone even photoshopped images of her in compromising positions. The Whitmore Industries stock had dropped 12%. 3 board members demanded Thaddeus's resignation. His mother stopped speaking to him entirely. And through it all, Thaddeus held firm. But Maggie could see the toll it was taking. The sleepless nights, the constant legal battles, the weight of choosing love over duty. "Come with me," he said one morning, appearing at her door before dawn. "Just for today. Let's pretend the world doesn't exist." He drove them 2 hours north to a small lake house he'd inherited from his grandmother. It was modest by Whitmore standards, which meant it only had 6 rooms instead of 32. "My grandmother was the only one who ever asked me what I wanted," Thaddeus explained as they sat on the dock, watching the sun rise over the water. "Not what was expected. Not what made business sense. Just what made me happy." "What did you tell her?" "That I wanted to write." Stupid, right? The Whitmore heir wanting to be a novelist instead of a CEO. He laughed bitterly. "She told me to follow my heart. Then she died, and I convinced myself that practicality was more important than passion." Maggie took his hand. "It's not stupid. What would you write about?" "I don't know anymore. Maybe about a man who was so busy building an empire that he forgot to build a life." He looked at her, vulnerability raw in his expression. "Maggie, I need you to be honest with me. Are you staying because you want to or because you feel obligated?" "What?" "Thaddeus, because I see it. The guilt. The way you flinch every time there's a new headline. You're carrying this weight like it's all your fault, and I can't stand watching you suffer." Maggie pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. "Your mother won't speak to you. Your company is losing millions. My parents can't leave their house without reporters harassing them. How is this not my fault?" "It's not your fault that my family built their entire identity on appearances. It's not your fault that I was too much of a coward to live authentically until I met you." He stood, pacing the dock. "Everyone wants to blame you because it's easier than admitting the system was broken all along." "But maybe they're right," Maggie whispered. "Maybe I am just a distraction, a phase you'll grow out of." "Is that what you think? That this is a phase?" "I don't know what to think anymore." She stood too, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. But loving you is costing you everything, and I don't know how to live with that." Thaddeus closed the distance between them, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You love me? Of course I love you, you impossible man. Why else would I still be here while the entire world calls me a whore and a gold digger?" "Say it again." "I love you," she sobbed. "I love you, and it's destroying both our lives." He kissed her then, hard and desperate, tasting like coffee and tears and promises. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, He pressed his forehead to hers. Then marry me. Maggie's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Today. Right now. There's a justice of the peace in town. His eyes were wild, fervent. I don't care about society weddings or family approval. I care about you. Marry me, Maggie Thornhill. You're insane. You're in the middle of a legal battle with Vivian. Your company is in crisis. This would make a statement that I choose you, that this isn't a fling or a rebellion, that I'm committed no matter what comes. He cupped her face. Unless you don't want, I want. The words came out strangled. I want everything with you. But Thaddeus, we need to be smart about this. I've been smart my whole life. It made me miserable. He kissed her again, softer this time. Be reckless with me. Just this once. They were 20 minutes from the justice of the peace when Thaddeus's phone exploded with calls. He finally answered one. What? When? His face went white. We're on our way. What happened? It's my father. Heart attack. He's at Greenwich Hospital. The lake house fantasy shattered. Reality came crashing back with brutal force. At the hospital, Catherine Whitmore looked 10 years older. Her perfect composure finally cracked. When she saw Thaddeus, she crumbled. Thank God you're here. They're saying he needs immediate surgery. Triple bypass. She clung to her son, then noticed Maggie hovering in the background. Her expression hardened. What is she doing here? Mother, your father is dying, and you bring your mistress to the hospital? She's not my mistress. She's the woman I love. Your father had this heart attack because of the stress you've caused. The scandal, the company crisis, all of it. Catherine's voice rose hysterically. If he dies, it's on your conscience, and hers. Maggie felt like she'd been punched. Catherine's words confirmed her deepest fear, that loving Thaddeus was actively harming the people around him. I should go, she said quietly. Maggie, no. Your mother's right. Your family needs you, not me, not drama. She backed away, her heart shattering. I'll call a cab. She fled before he could stop her, before she could see the anguish on his face. Back at the mansion, Maggie mechanically began packing. This was the right thing, the noble thing. Thaddeus needed to focus on his family, his company, his life, without her complications. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Magnolia Thornhill? A woman's smooth voice. This is Jennifer Chen from the New York Times. I'm writing a piece about your relationship with Thaddeus Whitmore. I'd love to hear your side of the story. I have nothing to say. Really? Because I have sources claiming you deliberately targeted Mr. Whitmore, that you researched his engagement and applied for the housekeeper position specifically to seduce him. That's not true. Then tell me what is true. Did you or did you not pursue a relationship with an engaged man? Maggie's hands shook. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Help me understand how a housekeeper from Tennessee ends up destroying one of Connecticut's most prominent families. The word destroying hit like a blade. I have to go. She hung up and stared at her reflection in the mirror. A girl from nowhere wearing clothes that didn't fit, trying to play in a world that would never accept her. Vivienne was right. She didn't belong here. Maggie pulled out her laptop and began typing her resignation letter. Short, professional, final. She was halfway through when the door burst open. Thaddeus stood there, still in his hospital clothes, looking wrecked. What are you doing? The right thing. I'm leaving. Like hell you are. He crossed the room and slammed the laptop shut. My father just woke up from surgery. You know what he said? He said he was sorry. Maggie blinked, confused. He apologized for putting so much pressure on me, for making me think duty was more important than happiness. He said my grandmother would be proud of me for finally choosing my own path. Thaddeus pulled Maggie to her feet. My father almost died today. and it made him realize he'd wasted too much of his life on things that didn't matter. Don't make the same mistake. But your mother, we'll come around or she won't. That's her choice. His grip tightened. You don't get to martyr yourself to make everyone else comfortable. I won't let you. I'm so tired of fighting, Maggie whispered. Then let's stop fighting. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I meant what I said at the lake. Marry me, Maggie. Not today, not recklessly, but soon, deliberately, with full knowledge of what we're choosing. The ring was simple, a single diamond on a gold band. Nothing ostentatious, just perfect. Yes, she breathed. Yes, you impossible, stubborn, wonderful man. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. The proposal is made, but the war isn't over. Can their love survive the final assault? And what will Vivian do when she learns they're engaged? The engagement announcement hit the press like a bomb. Within hours, Vivian's response was equally explosive. She filed a lawsuit, not just for breach of contract, but for intentional infliction of emotional distress, naming both Thaddeus and Maggie as defendants. The damages, $50 million. She can't possibly win this, Thaddeus's lawyer assured them. But she can make it expensive, public, and brutal. He wasn't wrong. Vivian's legal team subpoenaed everything: emails, text messages, employment records. They deposed Mrs. Henshaw, who reluctantly confirmed that Maggie and Thaddeus had been alone in the library that first week. They found the security footage of them by the pool, analyzed their body language, built a timeline suggesting premeditation. They're painting you as a calculated seductress, the lawyer explained grimly. A woman who deliberately infiltrated the household to steal an engaged man. The Whitmore Industries Board called an emergency meeting. Shareholders were threatening revolt. 3 major clients had pulled their contracts. The merger with Ashford Hotels was officially dead, costing the company an estimated $200 million. You need to step down, board member Harold Ashford Sinclair, Vivian's uncle, announced coldly. Temporarily, of course, until this scandal blows over. You mean until I dump Maggie and beg Vivian for forgiveness? Thaddeus's voice was ice. If that's what it takes to save this company, yes. Richard Whitmore, still recovering from his surgery, struggled to his feet. My son will not be stepping down, and if this board tries to force him out, I'll liquidate my shares and take half of you down with me. The room erupted in chaos. That night, Maggie found Thaddeus in his study, surrounded by legal documents and financial projections. He looked devastated. We're going to lose, he said quietly. Not the lawsuit, that's garbage, but the company. Everything my family built for 3 generations. I'm watching it crumble because I fell in love. Maggie's heart shattered. Then let me go. What? I'll leave. I'll sign a statement saying I seduced you, that you were innocent. I'll take all the blame, disappear, and you can rebuild. Tears streamed down her face. I can't watch you lose everything, Thaddeus. You think I care about the company more than you? He stood abruptly, papers scattering. Maggie, I would burn every dollar, every building, every share of stock if it meant keeping you. But you shouldn't have to make that choice. Life is nothing but choices. His voice cracked. And I choose you. Every single time, I choose you. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Henshaw stood in the doorway, her face pale. Mr. Whitmore, there are reporters outside, dozens of them. And Miss Ashford Sinclair just pulled up with cameras. They reached the front entrance to find Vivian on the steps, microphones thrust in her face, looking devastated in a black dress that screamed, "Wronged woman." I'm here to make one final plea, she announced, her voice trembling perfectly. Thaddeus, I know you're confused. I know she manipulated you, but I'm willing to forgive everything if you just come back to me. We can fix this. Together. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Thaddeus stepped outside and Maggie's stomach dropped when she saw his expression, resolved, final. Vivian, there's nothing to forgive because I'm not the victim here. You are. He paused, and the crowd went silent. You're the victim of an arrangement that neither of us wanted, but we were too afraid to admit it. We were going to be miserable together, and everyone knew it, except us. That's not true, Vivian whispered, but her facade was cracking. It is true. You don't love me, Vivian. You love what I represent. The merger, the status, the perfect society wedding. His voice gentled. You deserve someone who looks at you the way I look at Maggie. Someone who chooses you, not tolerates you. So that's it? You're throwing me away for the help? I'm setting us both free. He turned back toward the house, toward Maggie. And I'm choosing to be with someone who makes me want to be better, not just look better. Vivian's composure finally shattered. You'll regret this, both of you. I'll make sure. Miss Ashford Sinclair. A new voice cut through the chaos. A woman in a sharp suit stepped forward, badge visible. I'm Detective Maria Santos, Connecticut State Police. We need to talk about the threatening messages sent to the Thornhill family in Tennessee. Vivian went white. I don't know what you're talking about. We traced the IP addresses. They originated from your laptop. The detective produced a warrant. You're under investigation for cyberstalking and terroristic threats. The crowd exploded with new questions. Cameras swiveled to capture Vivian's horror. It wasn't me! Someone must have hacked... But she was already being led away, her perfect mask finally, irreversibly shattered. In the silence that followed, Maggie collapsed against Thaddeus, overwhelmed. Is it over? She whispered. Not quite. Richard Whitmore emerged from the house, leaning on his cane, Catherine beside him. For the first time in weeks, his mother looked at Maggie directly. My husband had a very frank conversation with me in his hospital room, Catherine said stiffly. He reminded me that I married him against my parents' wishes, that they thought he was beneath me, unsuitable, too ambitious. Her voice softened fractionally. I was very cruel to you, Magnolia. I projected my own fears onto your situation. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness, but I am asking for a chance to know the woman my son loves enough to risk everything for. Catherine extended her hand, trembling slightly. Will you give me that chance? Maggie took her hand, tears flowing freely now. Yes, ma'am. Richard cleared his throat. As for the company, we're holding a press conference tomorrow, announcing a restructuring. Thaddeus will remain CEO, but we're implementing new policies separating family drama from business decisions. He almost smiled. Your scandal actually exposed weaknesses in our corporate governance. Silver lining. That night, alone in Thaddeus's room, Maggie finally let herself believe it might actually be okay. What happens now? She asked, curled against his chest. Now? We plan a wedding. Small, private, nothing like the circus it was going to be. He kissed her hair. We let the lawyers handle Vivian. We rebuild what needs rebuilding. And we live our lives, unapologetically. Just like that? Just like that. He tilted her face up. Maggie Thornhill, soon to be Maggie Whitmore, I need you to understand something. Every hard thing we went through was worth it. Every headline, every lawsuit, every moment of doubt. Worth it. Because I get to love you. And be loved by you. I love you, she whispered. So much it scares me. Good. Love should be a little scary. It means it matters. Outside, the last reporters were packing up. The scandal was winding down, transforming from crisis to cautionary tale to eventually, hopefully, forgotten news. But for Maggie and Thaddeus, the real story was just beginning. The storm has passed, but one final chapter remains. How will they build their life together? What becomes of Vivian? And can a love born in chaos truly find its happily ever after? 6 months later, the lake house looked magical in October. Golden leaves drifted across the water, and the autumn sun painted everything in warm amber tones. Exactly 50 people gathered on the dock, Small, intimate, perfect. Maggie wore her grandmother's lace dress, altered to fit her, with wildflowers from the Thornhill Ranch woven into her hair. She looked like herself. No designer gown, no pretense, just Maggie, radiant and real. Harold walked her down the makeshift aisle, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face. "Your grandmother was right," he whispered. "Love found you exactly where you needed to be." Thaddeus stood at the end of the dock in a simple navy suit, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Beside him stood his father, recovered and smiling, serving as best man. The ceremony was brief, officiated by a local minister from Willow Creek. No pomp, no society pages, no cameras, just vows spoken from the heart. "Maggie," Thaddeus said, his voice thick with emotion, "you taught me that courage isn't about following expectations. It's about following your heart, even when it's terrifying. You saved my life by disrupting it. I promise to spend every day earning the gift of your love." "Thaddeus," Maggie replied, hardly able to speak through her tears, "you saw me when I felt invisible. You chose me when the world said you shouldn't. I promise to always be your home, your truth, and your adventure. I love you, and I choose you every single day." When they kissed, cheers erupted. Not polite applause, but genuine joy. Dorothy sobbed into Harold's shoulder. Catherine dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, finally accepting what her heart had known for months. This was real love, messy and beautiful. Even Mrs. Henshaw, standing with the small household staff who'd become family, allowed herself a smile. The reception was held in the lake house's backyard. No ice sculptures or string quartets, just a local bluegrass band, barbecue from Thaddeus's favorite spot, and Maggie's mother's famous apple pie for dessert. "This is perfect," Maggie whispered to her husband. "Husband," as they swayed to a slow song. "You're perfect," he corrected, kissing her forehead. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Thaddeus reluctantly released her and raised his glass. "6 months ago, my life imploded. I lost a fiancé, nearly lost my company, and definitely lost my mother's approval for a while." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained myself, and Maggie." He pulled her close. "Everyone told us we were too different, that it would never work, that we were destroying lives." His voice strengthened. "But the only thing we destroyed was the lie that love has to follow rules, that happiness has to look a certain way, that worth is measured in bank accounts instead of character." Richard Whitmore stood, raising his own glass. "To my son, who taught an old man that it's never too late to choose authenticity over appearance. And to Maggie, who proved that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places." "To Maggie and Thaddeus," the crowd chorused. As the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Maggie felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find a woman she didn't recognize. Elegant, in her 40s, with kind eyes. "I'm Dr. Patricia Morrison," the woman said softly. "I was Vivian's therapist. She wanted me to give you this." She handed Maggie an envelope. Inside was a letter in Vivian's precise handwriting. "Magnolia. I'm writing this from a rehabilitation center in Vermont, where I've spent the last 5 months working through some very difficult truths about myself. The charges were dropped. Thaddeus refused to press them, which was more grace than I deserved. I owe you an apology I can never adequately express. I was cruel, vindictive, and dangerous. I blamed you for exposing what I was too afraid to admit, that I was marrying Thaddeus for all the wrong reasons. My therapist helped me understand that I've spent my entire life performing for others, never asking what I actually wanted. Losing Thaddeus was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to finally look at myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you didn't destroy my life. You freed it. I'm learning who Vivian actually is, beneath the designer clothes and social expectations. It's terrifying and liberating. Be happy. You both deserve it. V. Maggie showed the letter to Thaddeus, who read it silently, then pulled her into a fierce embrace. "She'll be okay," Maggie said. "So will we," he promised. "Better than okay." 3 years later, the Whitmore Thornhill Foundation opened its doors on a sunny May morning. Located in a renovated building in downtown Greenwich, it provided scholarships, job training, and support for young people from rural communities trying to make their way in urban environments. Maggie, now Director of Operations, greeted the first cohort of students. "I know what it's like to feel out of place," she told them. "To be told you're not good enough, not sophisticated enough, that you don't belong. This foundation exists to prove that wrong." Behind her stood Thaddeus, now chairman of Whitmore Industries, a company restructured to prioritize ethics over pure profit, much to the board's initial horror and eventual respect. Turns out, doing good was also good business. In the audience sat Harold and Dorothy Thornhill, now frequent visitors to Connecticut. Catherine Whitmore sat beside them, having become unlikely friends with Maggie's mother through their shared love of gardening. Richard, fully recovered, ran the foundation's financial operations with the same fierce dedication he'd once reserved for corporate takeovers. And in Maggie's arms, fighting sleep despite the ceremony, was 18-month-old Rosemary Thornhill Whitmore, named for her great-grandmother who'd believed in unexpected love. After the ceremony, as they walked through the foundation's halls, Thaddeus stopped in front of a framed photo, Maggie in her worn boots and flannel shirt, standing beside her pickup truck on her first day at the mansion. "Remember when you were just the scared girl from Tennessee?" he teased. "Remember when you were just the miserable CEO marrying the wrong woman?" she shot back. He laughed and kissed her, baby Rosemary giggling between them. "Best mistake I ever almost made." "Not a mistake," Maggie corrected. "A detour to where we were always meant to be." That evening they returned to the lake house, now their primary residence, with the mansion used only for business. As they sat on the dock, watching the sunset with Rosemary playing with her toys, Maggie thought about how far they'd come. From that first electric moment by the pool to this quiet perfection, their love had been tested, scorned, attacked, and doubted. But it had survived. More than survived. It had thrived, transforming everyone it touched. "What are you thinking?" Thaddeus asked, his arm around her shoulders. "That your grandmother was right. And so was mine." She leaned into him. "Love really does find the pure of heart in the most unexpected places. And sometimes," he added, kissing her temple, "it even gets its happily ever after." Rosemary toddled over, arms outstretched, and they pulled her between them. A family built not on expectations or obligations, but on choice, courage, and a love fierce enough to change the world. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in impossible colors. And they lived, truly and completely, happily ever after. The end.